The wind drifted through the trees like a ghost, whispering secrets into the dark. Leaves stirred softly as the forest surrounding the small wooden cabin stood frozen, silent as it always was. No hum of distant engines, no voices. Only the crackle of fire inside and the soft, steady steps of a man named Daniel Dennell. He had lived alone for many years, built the cabin with his own hands, far from cities, far from war, far from anyone. Once he wore a soldier's uniform. Once he walked through fire and watched comrades fall. Now he wore plain clothes. His hands, thick with scars and dirt, told the story of 2 lifetimes. His eyes, hollow and still, reflected the silence of the forest. He had chosen this exile to escape the noise. He hunted, fished, read old, crumbling books. Some nights he lay beneath the stars and listened to nothing at all. And when the memories stirred, when ghosts of the past slipped in through the cracks, he'd close his eyes and whisper a quiet prayer they would vanish. They never did. But in the silence they grew quieter. Then the storm arrived. Lightning split the sky, and rain crashed down, pounding the earth with a fury that shook the trees. Inside, Daniel sat by the fire, cupping a mug of hot herbal tea wrapped in the familiar hush. And then, a sound. A knock. Unthinkable. He froze, the mug trembling in his grip. No one came here. No one should be here. No one knew this place existed. His heart pounded, harder than it had in years. Slowly he stood, cautious, tense. He reached for the old hunting knife resting on the shelf and moved toward the door. He opened it. A figure stood there, soaked from the rain. She was tall, graceful, yet weak. Her legs shook, and her silver hair clung to her face. Her eyes were not human. They glowed softly, like starlight. Her armor was strange, cracked, glowing with lines of blue light. One hand pressed to her side, blood dripping between her fingers. Before he could speak, she looked up and whispered something so soft he almost missed it. "Med kill you too if they find me then?" She fell into his arms unconscious. Danny stared down at the girl. No, the woman. No, something else. Not from Earth. Not even close. He felt her breath. She was alive, barely, and cold like ice. He carried her inside, laid her near the fire, and covered her with the only warm blanket he had. For the first time in years, his heart felt something. Not fear, not anger, but a strange sense of purpose. Looked at her strange armor, her sharp ears, the markings on her neck glowing gently, even in sleep. This was not a lost traveler. This was someone from another world. The storm outside got worse, thunder crashing like a warning. Daniel checked the door, locked it, and looked back at the stranger. She moved a little, her lips parting in dreams. Or, maybe, Pi did not ask questions, not yet. Instead, he made a herbal paste and cleaned her wounds. The blood was dark, almost purple, not like his, but it clotted the same way. Her body felt warm again, her breath deeper, more stable. Sat near the fire, watching her for hours. Not sure what tomorrow would bring. Not sure if he was ready for anything to change. But change had already come. As the fire crackled and the storm roared outside, something in the forest moved. A soft vibration, a sound too deep for normal ears. Something had followed her, but Daniel did not know that. Yet. He only knew that the silence he once loved was now broken. And he could not go back to the quiet life he once had. Not anymore. With her here. Not with whatever was coming next. Morning sun slipped through the cracks in the wooden cabin. But the storm had left. Everything soaked. The air smelled of wet earth and smoke from the fire. Daniel sat beside the sleeping girl, watching her chest rise and fall. Slow, steady. She had not moved much since last night, but her face no longer looked full of pain now. It looked calm, peaceful, even though her body was clearly not from this world. Had questions, many questions, but he had no answers. He only knew that something had knocked on his door, something beautiful, strange, and bleeding, and that he had let it. Incidentally, her eyes opened, and they locked on him. They were not like human eyes. They were deep silver, glowing gently like moonlight dancing on water. She stared at him without fear or surprise, only with caution and a kind of sharp focus, as if she was measuring him, judging him with every second. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice soft but clear, her accent smooth but unfamiliar. Daniel spoke slowly. "You're safe." Foss looked around, her gaze stopping at the old tools on the wall, the books, the wooden table. Then her hands moved over her side, where he had treated the wound. "You touched me," she said, not angry, just stating a fact. Daniel nodded. "You were bleeding badly." She sat up suddenly, sharp pain making her wince, but she did not cry out. Her skin shimmered as she moved, not from sweat, but from something else, something unnatural, like her body was made of living light hidden under the skin. "What are you?" he asked quietly. She looked at him for a long time and then replied, "I am Varaya, princess of the House of Elthirin of the Nurulin Imperia." He blinked slowly. That meant nothing to him. He had never heard of Nurulin or Elthirin or any of those things. But princess, he understood. "Not safe here," he said slowly. "If someone is hunting you, they might come for you again." "They will," she answered simply. "They never stop. Why are they after you?"
He took this in slowly. No emotion showed on his face, but inside his thoughts ran wild. "And now you're here," he said. She looked at him directly. "I did not choose to fall in front of your door. The ship crashed. I barely made it into the forest before I collapsed. You are lucky I found you," Daniel said. She laughed, but it was short and bitter. "Lucky or cursed? Depends on what." Then they both heard it. A strange sound, deep and far away, like a low hum mixed with the cry of a beast. Varaya stood fast, even though her body shook. Her hand reached out, and something on her wrist lit up, glowing in a pattern of golden rings. "They are scanning," she whispered. Daniel stood and looked out the window. Trees, 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 but something moved out there, something big and slow and getting closer. "Have to hide," he said. "No," Varaya answered. "If they find us hiding, we are dead." "Then what? Run now, before they lock on?" Daniel grabbed his old pack, threw in a knife, a flask, and some dried food. He handed her a cloak and helped her to her feet. She was weak but proud, her posture tall even in pain. They left the cabin behind, stepping into the thick green forest, the silence now filled with dread. As they moved through the trees, Varaya explained more. She told him that her blood carried royal codes, that her body itself was a living key to the throne, and that the one who bonded her would control entire fleets, entire worlds. "They want to use me," she said. "Not love me, not protect me. Just use me for what I am." Daniel listened without speaking. He was not good with words, not anymore. But his steps were sure and his eyes always watching, always ready. The forest changed as they went deeper. Shadows thickened. The light grew dim even though the sun was still up. Birds stopped singing, and even the wind held its breath.
They were being hunted. Daniel knew that feeling too well, and as he looked at Varaya, struggling to keep her pace, yet refusing to ask for help, he knew something had changed inside him. He was no longer alone, and he could not walk away. Not from her, not now. They moved deeper into the forest, each step taken with care, each breath held like a secret. The trees grew taller here, older, the ground soft with moss, and the light from the sky barely reached them. Varia followed behind Daniel, her cloak dragging, her silver hair still damp from the rain. She kept looking back, as if shadows would turn into soldiers at any moment. Daniel knew the terrain better than anyone. This forest had been his only companion for years. He had mapped every hidden path, every route that could trip a man, every spot where a fire might be lit. Without smoke rising, he led her to a cave hidden behind a waterfall. The sound of the water masked their presence, and the stone inside was cool, dry, and dark. "This will do for now," he said, placing a small torch in the wall. A soft light filled the space as Var sank to the ground, exhausted. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to help." Daniel said nothing. He simply nodded and walked to the back of the cave where he opened a small box. Inside was an old military communicator, dusty and half broken. It still had power, but just barely. He hesitated, then powered it on. A weak blue light blinked alive. The screen showed static, but the signal bar flickered with life. He typed a short message. "Unidentified being injured. Need medical scan. Please, adversus." Paused. Looked back at Varia, who sat silently, watching the torchlight dance on the cave walls. Then he sent it. The message vanished into the silence of space. But something else did not. Varia stood quickly, her eyes wide. "What did you do?" "Sent a scan request," he said. Nothing more. Her voice was sharp, cold. "You should not have done that. You have no idea who could receive it. Now they will know where we are." "Encrypted," he said softly. "No one can trace it." "No encryption can stop them," she said. "They are not using normal tech. They are using—" Daniel stared, confused. "Using what?" Varia held up her arm, showed him a scar along her wrist. "This is not a wound. This is a tracker built into my body. They can feel when I am close. They know when I bleed, when I speak, when I breathe." Daniel felt a chill run through him. "It means," she said, "your signal just gave them a path, a line to follow. They will come." "How long?" "Less than an hour, maybe less if they are already in the area." Daniel turned and smashed the communicator against the cave wall until it was nothing but sparks and broken glass. He looked at her. She was trembling, not with fear, but with fury, and something deeper, something that felt like guilt. "Didn't mean to betray you," he said. "You didn't," she replied. "But now we have to run." Daniel grabbed supplies, packed everything fast but neat, his movements sharp, practiced, like the soldier he once was. He gave her a flask, helped her stand, and without another word, they disappeared into the forest. Once more. The wind had changed. Somewhere far behind, something moved, something unnatural. Branches bent without touch, birds fled without sound, and the shadows grew thicker. Together they ran. Varia explained everything. "My people, the Ilan, we do not just rule, we bond. Our rulers pass down bloodline memories locked inside genetic keys. I hold one of those keys, and they want to take it by force. If they bond with me, they gain all past knowledge, war strategies, secrets, even control over planetary codes." Daniel listened, not because he understood it all, but because he needed to. He had brought this storm down on them, and he had to fix it. He stopped suddenly, raised a hand. She froze beside him. Up ahead, smoke. A thin line, but enough to mean danger. Daniel signaled her to move around, but it was too late. They had been spotted. A drone dropped from the sky, small, silent, with a red eye that blinked rapidly. It scanned the area, then focused on them. Daniel threw a stone, striking its sensor, but the damage was done. It had seen. He shouted, "Run!" They ran faster, the forest blurring past them, roots snapping underfoot, branches slashing their faces, but they kept moving. Verea stumbled once. Daniel caught her, kept going, his hand gripping hers tightly. Behind them, a sound like metal ripping. They had arrived. The ones who wanted her, the ones who would kill him without mercy. Daniel knew they could not run forever, would have to fight. Not this time. Would not run from war. The sky above turned darker, even though it was not yet night. A thick mist crept between the trees, as if the forest itself wanted to hide what was coming. Daniel held Verea's hand tight as they moved quickly, dodging fallen logs, sharp stones, and low-hanging branches. The sounds behind them grew louder. Something metallic, something that did not belong in nature. She looked weak, but her eyes were alert, her breathing fast, but not panicked. She kept glancing over her shoulder, scanning the woods for movement. She knew what was following them better than Daniel ever could. "They are using hunter shells," she whispered. "They do not tire, they do not stop, and they do not feel." Daniel did not speak. His focus was forward, always forward. He had to think of something, some way to turn the land into a weapon, something to slow their enemy. He changed direction sharply, pulling Verea toward a narrow path, one that twisted through thick thorn bushes and uneven ground. It was a path he had found years ago while exploring alone, one he never used because it was dangerous. But now danger was already behind them. They crawled through the narrow pass. Verea's arm brushed against a thorn, and a faint glow spilled from her cut. She hissed softly. The blood was not red. It shimmered pale blue and smelled like ozonu. "I cannot keep running like this," she said quietly. "Want to?" Daniel replied. He stopped near a cluster of trees with roots that rose from the ground like walls. He let go of her hand and began digging through the soil until he uncovered a hidden metal box, old, rusted, but intact. Inside were supplies, traps, wires, a handmade bow, and a few arrows carved from alien wood, tipped with sharpened bone. "Planned for war?" she asked. "Planned to be left alone," he answered. He worked fast, setting up tripwires along the path, hanging snares from the branches, building a spike trap just behind the curve of a rock wall. Verea helped, her hands quick, her movements exact. She may have been royalty, but she was no stranger to survival. The traps were done. They moved further ahead, taking cover behind a fallen tree, covered in moss and shadow. They waited. The forest was silent again, but only for a moment. Then came the sound of a low hum, rising slowly, growing louder. Then a figure appeared through the mist, tall, armored, its face hidden behind a silver mask, its arms ending in curved blades, its legs moving with unnatural smoothness. It stepped onto the path. The first tripwire snapped. A sudden explosion of netting covered it, trapping its limbs. It slashed wildly, but got tangled in the wires. Another step triggered the spike trap. Sharp wood drove into its side, but still it moved. Daniel raised his bow, fired an arrow. It struck the neck of the creature, causing it to fall backward, twitching, the glow in its mask fading. "Finally down," he said. "Quiet." Then more footsteps. Not one, Not 2, but 5 shadows moving fast through the trees. They had seen the explosion, they had heard the fall, and they were smarter. Varia stood ready, her hands glowing faintly with energy. "I can fight too," she said. Daniel nodded, but kept his eyes on the trees. One of the enemies leaped over the trap, landing near them. Daniel swung a heavy branch, knocking it back. Varia followed with a blast of energy from her palm, sending it crashing into a tree. They fought together, Daniel using the land, Varia using her power, but they were outnumbered, and they knew it. "Need to run again," he shouted. Varia looked at him and nodded, but then her body trembled, and she dropped to one knee, her strength fading fast. Daniel lifted her without a word and ran. He did not stop. When branches tore at his face, he did not stop. When blood dripped from his arm, he did not stop. He only stopped when he reached the old cave beneath the ridge, a place even deeper and darker than before. He set her down gently and checked her pulse, still strong, but her body was overusing its power. "You should have rested," he said. "I could not let them take you," she whispered weakly. Daniel turned toward the cave entrance and set more traps. This time with fire, this time with fury. They would come again, but now he was ready. This time he would make sure they paid for every step they took. The cave was silent. Only the sound of Varia's slow breathing filled the space. The light from the small fire flickered across the stone walls, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. Daniel sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the entrance, his bow ready, his body tense. Every sound outside made his heart beat faster. But he did not move. He had made a promise without words, a promise to protect her no matter what. Varia stirred, her eyes opening slowly. Her skin looked pale, her glow dimmer than before, but her voice was steady. "They are not gone." She said, "They never give up." "No," Daniel replied. "They will come, but we will be ready." "You should have left me," she whispered softly. "You had the chance." He looked at her, his voice low. "I already did that once to someone, and I promised. Never again." Her gaze softened. For the first time, she saw more than a hermit in him. She saw pain, guilt, maybe something deeper, something human, something real. "You are different," she said. "Maybe," he answered. "Maybe not." She sat up slowly, her body weak but her spirit strong. She reached for something around her neck, a small crystal hidden beneath her clothing. She held it up and whispered a word in her language. The crystal glowed, and a wave of light washed over her body. Her form began to shift slowly. Her armor dissolved into golden particles. Her skin shimmered, turning from soft silver to a radiant glow. And then she stood, not as a wounded girl, not as a stranger, but as something more. Her eyes were no longer just glowing. They were stars themselves. Her hair flowed like liquid light, and markings of ancient language appeared along her arms, glowing like fire. Daniel stood frozen, staring at her, unable to speak. "This is who I truly am," she said, her voice echoing slightly. "I hid my form to blend in, to escape, but now there is no point here." "Not just a princess," he said slowly. She replied, "I am heir to the throne of Naralan, born of the prime line, bearer of the soul flame." Daniel had no idea what that meant, but he understood one thing. She was more powerful than she had shown, and also more hunted than he had imagined. "Show me now," she said. "You're scared because you need to know what you are protecting, because if you choose to walk away now, I will not stop you." He shook his head slowly. I made my choice long before I knew the truth." She smiled a little, her light dimming again. As her strength faded, she fell forward, and he caught her gently, her head resting against his shoulder. "You need rest," he said softly. "You used too much energy." "I'll be fine," she whispered. "But you must be careful. If they capture me in this form, they will force the bond. And if that happens, millions will fall under their control." He helped her lie down again and stood watch once more. But now his mind raced. Thoughts about the wars he had fought, the people he had failed, the life he had chosen to escape it all. And now here he was again, protecting someone hunted by monsters. Only this time it felt different. It felt right. The fire died down. The cold crept in. But the enemies did not come. Not yet. Just as Daniel was beginning to think they had passed him by, a sound echoed through the cave, a sharp pulse like a distant bell, followed by silence. He moved to the entrance, looked outside, and saw something that made his blood freeze. A single figure stood at the edge of the trees, tall, armored, cloaked in darkness, its face hidden, but its presence heavy. It raised one hand slowly and pointed directly at the cave. "Not good," he whispered. He turned back to Veria, who was now sitting up, her body glowing brighter again. She had sensed it too. "They found us," she said. Daniel replied, "And they are not hiding anymore." Veria stood, her feet steady this time, her power building around her like a rising storm. "Then let them come," she said. Daniel gave a small nod and lifted his bow. The hunter had returned. But now the hunted were ready. The figure did not move. It stood beneath the trees, like a statue made of shadow. The forest behind it was still, too still, as if the world itself waited to see what would happen next. Daniel watched from the cave entrance, his grip on the bow tight, his body tense, every part of him ready to fight or run. Veria stood beside him, her form still glowing softly, though not as bright as before. Her breath was calm, but her eyes never left the figure below. She spoke without turning her head. "That is not just a soldier. That is a seeker. They send them when they want something taken." Daniel frowned. "You said they never take prisoners." "Not normal ones," she replied. "But me, I am not normal." The seeker raised both hands slowly, palms facing forward, a universal sign of peace. Then its voice echoed through a device on its chest, clear, smooth, and in a language both of them understood. "Come to speak, not to fight." Daniel exchanged a look with Veria. She nodded once. He stepped out from behind the rocks, arrow still notched, but lowered slightly. "Speak fast," Daniel said. The seeker did not move. "I offer you a trade, the girl for freedom. Walk away now, and you will not be harmed." Daniel almost laughed. He shook his head slowly. "You tracked her across galaxies, attacked her, tried to kill both of us, and now you offer peace?" "You misunderstand," the seeker said. "If we wanted you dead, you would be. The girl belongs to a power greater than you can imagine. Her presence threatens balance." "She chose to leave that power," Daniel replied. "Choice means nothing when bloodlines rule the stars," the seeker answered. "Give her to us, and you will be rewarded. Land, credits, safe passage anywhere in the human zones." Daniel felt something twist in his chest. For a moment, the offer echoed in his mind. He could disappear again, truly disappear. Live quietly, without fear. No more battles, no more pain. But then he looked back at Veria, her face calm, yet proud, her hands glowing faintly, her eyes not begging, not pleading, just watching, as if waiting to see who he truly was. He looked back at the Seeker and said, "No." The Seeker was silent. Then it tilted its head, as if confused. Then it lowered its hands. "Very well. The offer is withdrawn. You have chosen destruction." Before Daniel could react, the Seeker vanished in a blink. A shimmer of light, and it was gone. He turned to Varaya. "We need to move. They will come in numbers now." Varaya nodded, but her body trembled. She was getting weaker again, using power just to stand. "I cannot run," she said. "Not again." "Then we fight." Daniel helped her sit down and began preparing traps again, only this time he added fire. Small bombs made from minerals and oils found in the forest. When ignited, they would burst into flame, hot and wild. He placed them around the cave entrance, then created a narrow escape tunnel through a crack in the cave wall, something he had started digging years ago when paranoia still ruled his nights. The traps were ready. He returned to Varaya and knelt beside her. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "Do you trust me?" He said nothing. She reached out and placed her glowing fingers on his chest, just over his heart. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I am giving you a part of me," she replied. "Not the bond, but a spark. It will protect you for a short time, give you strength beyond your limits." He felt warmth spread through him, not heat, but something else, like courage made real. His eyes widened, but he said nothing. "Thank you," he whispered. Outside, the wind shifted, branches moved, something approached. "They're here," he said. Varaya stood beside him, her glow stronger now. For a moment she looked like a star fallen to the ground. The first enemy appeared, then another, then 5 more. Their armor black, their weapons silent, their steps perfect, weighted, hearts steady. The firebombs, hidden, ready. The escape path behind them, open. When the enemies crossed the line, it struck the first spark. Fire exploded across the entrance, flames rising high, shadows dancing. Screams filled the air, metal clashed with stone. And Daniel moved like a ghost, striking fast, vanishing, reappearing behind. Then Varya joined the fight, her hands sending waves of light that shattered armor and bent the air around her. They fought not as strangers, but as one. But more were coming. Too many. Daniel knew this was only the beginning. He turned to her, eyes burning. "We run, through the tunnel, now." She hesitated, then nodded, and together they vanished into the crack. Behind them, the fire still burning, the cave collapsing, and the enemies screaming into smoke. The tunnel was dark, narrow, and cold. The stone scraped against their shoulders as they moved forward, with only the soft glow from Varya's skin to light the way. Each breath echoed off the walls. Each step felt louder than it should. Daniel led the way, moving fast but careful. His body sore, his heart still beating too fast from the fight behind them. Varya followed close behind, her energy low, but her spirit unshaken. She had seen battle before, she had felt fear before, but something about this moment felt different. This was no longer just survival. It was something more. After what felt like hours, they reached the end of the tunnel. It opened into a small hidden valley, surrounded by cliffs and thick with mist. A place even Daniel had rarely visited, untouched, quiet, perfect for one last stand. "They will not stop," she said softly. "Not until I am theirs, or—" Daniel looked at her, and for the first time spoke not with silence, not with action, but with words that felt heavier than weapons. Then let them come, and let them learn what it means to challenge someone with nothing left to lose. Verea stared at him, her eyes soft with something new, something close to sorrow and something very near to respect. "You should not have to die for me," she said. "Not for you," he replied. "But maybe this is not about dying. Maybe it is about choosing what to stand for." They began preparing again, but this time there were no traps, no explosions, just the valley, the mist, and their will to face whatever came. They waited. The air grew colder. The wind died. The forest beyond the cliffs stilled. Then came the sound again, the hum that filled bones and froze hearts. The seekers were back. And this time they brought more. A ship descended, black and sharp like a blade of night. It hovered above the valley, and from its sides poured soldiers, faceless, armored, moving with perfect silence. They surrounded the cliffs, closed every path, watched from every height. Daniel stood tall, his bow in hand, his feet steady. Verea stepped forward, her body glowing brighter than ever, her voice strong enough to stop an army. The army froze, as if stone. From the ship descended a final figure, tall, golden, marked with the symbols of command. His voice was calm but cruel. "You cannot escape this time, child. Your place is among your blood. Your fate is to be bound and your power shared." "I will never bow to you," she said. "Then die," he replied. He raised his hand and the army moved. Daniel fired his first arrow, striking one soldier, then another, his movement like a dance of rage and silence. Verea raised both hands and sent out a pulse of light, blinding, pure. It stopped some of the enemy for a moment, long enough for Daniel to strike again. But they kept coming, too many, more than before. Daniel was hit, thrown back into the mud, his breath knocked out, his body bruised. Verea screamed, ran to him, her power rising too fast, her skin burning with energy. She unleashed a storm, a wave of force that cracked the ground, shattered the air, and threw the army into chaos. But it was too much. Her body trembled, her knees buckled, and she fell beside him. They lay there together, the army regaining its strength, surrounding them once more. Then something changed. The ground began to shake. New light filled the sky from above. Another ship descended, marked with the seal of the old alliance, the symbol of peace between human and alien. "Wait!" a voice echoed across the valley. "This human is under our protection. This princess is not yours to claim." The enemy hesitated, uncertain. From the ship emerged diplomats, warriors, leaders, people of power who knew the law and were ready to speak it. Daniel stood again, helped Verea to her feet. They faced the enemy side by side and watched as, one by one, the invaders withdrew. The war was not over, but this battle was won. Later, after the dust had settled, after the valley was quiet again, Verea stood before her people and declared her choice. "I name Daniel, protector of the royal flame, bearer of my trust, and guardian of my future." Daniel did not speak. He simply stood tall beside her. And across the stars, the legend began of the silent man who once lived alone in the woods, and who became the light that saved a throne,